Welcome back, fellow Manor Lords. This time I have an incredibly powerful technique to share with you. In this video, I'm going to show how you can supply your town with massive amounts of bread, but not through farming. And this strategy can be used in literally any region and any setup. It does require at least a decent economy, so for the demonstration here, I'm on my town that I showed in my guide for max profits and economy, utilizing only the core 3 trade items for income, which I showed in that video. Which, by the way, is way more than enough to fund this consistently, along with plenty left over for whatever else. Make sure to check out that video if you haven't already, but here I'll show you why and how this is possible, and of course we'll take a look at some of the numbers to get some perspective on the expected costs compared to the output. So let's dive into it. The backbone of this setup and why it's even a viable possibility is the bakery housing extension. This has had a couple of very key adjustments since the new updates. First of all, this is another one of the options that used to be locked behind a development point. As a matter of fact, it was a second tier development point, so this means you needed to have at least a level 3 town to access it, and you had to spend 2 development points. This is already nice to have available because this bakery housing extension has always produced twice as much bread compared to the communal oven. But here's where it gets exciting. The communal oven now produces 2 bread per flour instead of just 1 bread per flour. So you can guess what that means. The bakery housing extension now actually turns 1 single flour into a whopping 4 bread. And it's the same for either wheat or rye. You will notice that the tooltip here does not reflect that in the current beta version, or maybe by the time you're watching this video, it's all updated. But I tested it out to share the results with you all, and let's just say if any of your villagers are gluten-free, they're going to be missing out because you're going to have tons of bread using this approach. So first, let's go ahead and take a look at the trading post. Rye flour costs 12 regional wealth each to import, and rye grain only costs 11 regional wealth each to import. Either of these are going to net you 4 bread at your bakery housing extension. So essentially, we're providing food to our town for 3 regional wealth each or even less. And just for comparison here, we can see that the only other alternatives is to get single food items for as cheap as 11 regional wealth. That is our cheapest other option, and once again, that is just for a single food item. So obviously, this is going to be by far the biggest bang for our buck for importing food into the town. Now, the other advantage with using rye here is that it is in the minor trade category, so you don't even need to purchase the major trade route to be able to import this. You'll see here, I did purchase the major trade routes here for this town because I was testing out the difference in, whether or not it would be necessary to get in these bulk trades. It is nice, depending on how much you want to spend and how much you want to import, but honestly, it's not even necessary. I would say you can go ahead and just import without the major trade route due to the fact that you're going to get a multiplication of 4 every time you produce one at your bakery. Then honestly, it's really not that necessary to purchase the major trade route here either. Now, like I said, you can go for wheat. But as we can see, the wheat grain and wheat flour are both in the major trade category. So that being said, it is a requirement to unlock the major trade route to utilize either of these. And the price to import them is also slightly higher than it is for the rye grain or rye flour. So this is going to be the most economical option by far. And honestly, you guys are going to be just absolutely amazed with how much bread you're going to be able to produce with such a minimal investment, especially if you're using the powerful economy setup. It's just going to be extremely easy, guys. For perspective, I've been importing just rye grain while selling only the core 3 trade items from the exact same setup that I showed in my economy guide. So let's take a look at the trade records and resources tab here to compare how much we made, how much we spent, and how much bread we produced. So here we can see we are only selling the charcoal, the yarn, and the small shields, once again, just from the same core 3 items that I showed in the trade guide. And as we can see here, we've only spent a fraction of our profits here on buying a bit of the rye grain here. So we've spent 880 regional wealth here to buy 80 rye grain. So now we can go ahead and take a look here in the resources tab. And once again, this is within just the last 365 days, just so you know for what reference time frame we're looking at here. And we can go to the resources tab, and now we can see right here is the proof. So the rye bread, we imported 80 rye grain. Now 80 times 4 is 320. So, there's 1 rye grain still lying around somewhere that they haven't baked yet. But yeah, as you can see, basically they have produced 4 rye bread per rye grain. So all I did was send that to the windmill, turn the grain into the flour, and then it went to the bakery right next door, and I have a granary right next to that. So yeah, they are cranking out the bread. And just so we can see here, this is showing for the past 12 months. We can see here that the rye grain is outproducing every other food source that I have in the town. And this, I only imported the rye grain maybe within the last 3 months or so. So they have produced all of this within like a fraction of the time compared to all of the other food options that I am producing in my town. And it only has taken a fraction of our profits here from our trade, just from these core 3 items. And our trade could be even more profitable if we were selling other things too, like clay or stone blocks or, some of the other items that I showed in that guide. So, I mean, honestly, guys, hopefully you can see here, like, this is honestly just so incredibly powerful. It's so good, it almost even feels like a hack, but I do think that these are the correct values, and the tooltip is just incorrect, and we'll see the tooltip get updated. Maybe by the time you're watching this video, the tooltip is actually updated. But yeah, and you can see this is something that can be used in any region. So we'll go ahead and take a look at more details about that right now. You can even increase the production and lower the cost by growing some of your own rye, because this is now available as a standard option on any field. And even regions that don't have good fertility usually have at least a couple patches of decent fertility for rye specifically. This was also locked behind a second-tier development point previously, so between this and the bakery housing extension, that was 4 development points that you would have had to spend for this setup, and not to mention having to level up your town significantly. And furthermore, if a chunk of your region is the meadow environment, you'll probably have a decent bonus from the pollination affinity, which will also give you an extra chance for additional crop yields. So this is another addition to the setup that you could consider. I would just advise that ideally you think ahead about this and look where there might be patches of rye fertility on the land before starting your town layout. And of course, if you do have rich fertility, you can still utilize this setup, but you will of course be able to supply more of your own wheat and or rye. Or you could just opt to focus more on producing more flax or barley with your farming setup, for example, and then just import rye grain or flour. This video is not necessarily to discourage you from using farming if that's what you want to do, because a full traditional farming setup still does have many benefits. Like I mentioned with the flax and the barley, you could also supply your town with clothing and ale on top of the food. But I just wanted to show that this is a viable option even if you don't have access to a region with high fertility, or maybe you don't want to re-roll your region or whatever else. This just adds a lot of leeway to basically any town setup. I hope this video was enjoyable or helpful to you in some way, and as always, please let me know in the comments if you have any questions or feedback. So thank you for watching, I appreciate all the support, and I hope to see you in the next video.